need to remember in the days in which we're living in, where we're seeing prophecy fulfilled before our eyes. It's like what the Bible said, these things are sealed unto the end. And I believe we're literally in a season of unsealing. What's interesting is that Numbers 23 and Numbers 24 in particular are focused on the end times. In fact, in one of those prophecies, Balaam says, let me tell you what will happen in the Acharit Yamim, what will happen in the latter days. But what's significant to understand is that just before the strike, Israel's initial strike on Iran, Prime Minister Netanyahu went to the Kotel, which Christians commonly refer to as the Western Wall or as the Wailing Wall. He even wore a talit, a Jewish prayer shawl. He put a handwritten note in Hebrew at the Western Wall. Many of you all have done that with us in Israel. And he quoted a verse in that handwritten note, Numbers 23:24, which says this in Hebrew, Hen am kalevi yakum. The people rise like a lioness, like a lion who does not rest until he eats his prey. This verse is what inspired Prime Minister Netanyahu in that note in the Western Wall. And it's where the name for this latest operation against Iran, this 12-day war known as Kalavi, okay, which literally means a people like a lioness, or a people who arises like a lioness who feels her cubs are in danger and rises to defend them. This is what is behind what's going on here. And there is a lot of prophetic significance. My mind was blowing as the dots were connecting. The 12-day war with Iran began on our calendar on June 13th. But on the Hebrew calendar, this was the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Sivan, so the 17th of Sivan. But the question is, anything that happens of significance in Israeli history, in Jewish history, has to happen on a day that's important, especially something of this significance. So what is historically and spiritually significant about the day this operation against Iran began? Well, the first thing that's really interesting, guess what? It is the day in Jewish history that the ark, Noah's Ark, came to finally rest on Mount Ararat. So the ark rested on the 17th day of Sivan, the same day that this war began. There's actually dispute among some scholars whether the ark is in Turkey or the ark is actually in Iran somewhere. So it's interesting. There could be actually an ark connection there. Okay. But something more, think about it. The fact that the ark rested on the same day that this operation began, I think ties into something of deeper significance. Yeshua said in the Olivet Discourses, end times discourse, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So the question is, the end is going to be like the beginning. As we've talked about before, the reason why God brought a flood on the earth, Genesis 6 tells us, is that because there was Hamas. Well, think about it. How did we get here? It all began when Hamas attacked Israel. And who is the major backer of Hamas? Hamas in Hebrew means violence, by the way. It is Iran. It is biblical Persia. It is the head of the octopus. It's the head that controls all these tentacles, all these proxies. So the fact that this campaign began and had such success initially, it went off with so force. It was like a lion pouncing on its prey, like the Numbers 23 and 24 prophecy speaks of. And so again, I think it points to the fact that we're living in the days of Noah. But there's more, right? So on June 19th, which is the 23rd day of Sivan, so starts on the 13th, okay, of June. But then on June 19th, which is the 23rd of Sivan, right in the middle of this campaign, guess what? That's the day in biblical history that Mordecai issued a royal decree calling upon the Jews of the kingdom of Persia to defend themselves against the attack that Haman had planned against them. So at the season that this attack was occurring, it's the first time in history, oldest record of an organized Jewish self-defense against their enemies in exile. And so, of course, they attack Persia, Iran, the same place where Mordecai defended himself against Haman and the Persians who wanted to kill him. I don't think this is a coincidence. But of course, there's something even more. On Friday, June 20th, something significant happened. So we know that Jewish people read through the 5 books of Moses, known as the Torah, over the course of a year today. But what's interesting is that many Orthodox Jews do something known as the Daf Yomi, which means the daily daf. And the daf is a name for a page of the Talmud. The Talmud is the foundational rabbinic literature, foundational piece of rabbinic literature, foundational rabbinic text of Judaism. And so this was developed a 7.5-year cycle where you read through the Talmud. It's about, I think, 3,000 something pages over 7.5 years. Okay, what's interesting, on the day of Friday, June 20th, the reading that they're doing all over the world was from the tractate in the Talmud, Avodah Zarah. And it talks about 2 great nations that will arise at the end of the days, 2 nations that are key to end time prophecy. Who are those 2 key nations? The first was Persia. Okay. The first was Persia, and the second is Rome. And the rabbis say their kingship will last, meaning their kingdoms will last, their influence in the world will last until the Messiah comes. And the rabbis say that these 2 kingdoms, one is Persia and Ishmael uniting to come against Israel and to come against the West. And then this is exactly what we see. It's those radicals in the Arab world, the Houthis, Hamas, the proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Qatar, that have joined with the Iranians to attack Israel and U.S., undermine U.S. They chant death to America, death to Israel in Iran. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the leader of Iran, which is ancient Persia, the one who started the Iranian Revolution was Ayatollah Khomeini and his supporters. And now the second Ayatollah is Ayatollah Khamenei. So you have Khomeini and Khamenei. And in Hebrew, the rabbis say that the name Khamenei means Hamanites, that they are at least spiritually or in some way related to Haman, who was a descendant of Amalek. And that's the reason why they wanted the nuclear program, because unlike a place like North Korea that wants a nuclear arms to protect and ensure that no one can ever come against them, Iran ideologically believes that they have to create chaos in the world and that Israel has to be destroyed in order to bring their Mahdi, their version of the Messiah. So they are serious and potentially ideologically driven enough, fundamentally and fanatical enough to actually use a nuclear weapon if they got it. But then what about Rome? Well, Rome was originally Edom in the Bible, which is by Jordan. Then it's believed, according to Jewish history, that the Edomites, some of them moved to Italy and they became Rome. Rome never died. It was just reconstituted and absorbed into Western nations. And so Rome represents the West. Some rabbis say Rome represents America. So if Persia is Iran and Rome is the West, and the US is the head of the West, meaning the head of Rome, America's bombing of Iran's nuclear sites happened. That Rome bombed Persia. The West bombed Persia. And that passage in the Talmud was read on Friday, and the bombing of the U.S. on Iran happened Easter in the U.S. time on Saturday, the very next day. It's crazy. So think about it for a moment. The day the U.S. bombed Iran was June 22nd, approximately 2 a.m. in Iranian time. But in the U.S., the place where the order was given, the place where it was originated, it was 5:30 p.m. on Saturday. On that Saturday, the Torah portion that was read all throughout the synagogues of the world was Parshat Shlach, which is Moses sending the 12 spies into the land. Think about it. 12 spies go into the land to scout out the promised land. 10 see the giants. They come back. They have such fear. They give a negative report. They say, no way we can go in and conquer the land. Just forget about it. Only 2 bring a good report. The 10 that were in fear was like many past U.S. leaders, many leaders and people in the U.S. and in the West who had been scared of Iran and literally thought about them like the 10 spies in the Torah portion of the week in the book of Numbers. They saw the giants, they saw the Iranians as giants, as a giant threat, and they saw themselves in a sense as grasshoppers, meaning that they could be greatly harmed as a result, whether politically or physically from attacks, terrorists, or whatever. Only 2 bring a good report, Joshua and Caleb. Well, think about it. 2 bring a good report. 2 decided to take a stand against Israel, against Iran, and that is President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. They were like modern day Joshua and Caleb mentioned in that week's Torah portion.